So I've been hearing this a lot. Women in their menopausal or perimenopausal years are just broken. Their metabolism doesn't work. Their cortisol's too high. Therefore, they shouldn't do high intensity exercise. They should moderate their exercise. They should only do low intensity. They shouldn't lift weights. And the list goes on, right? And it's really confusing. So I want to clear that up and I want to share exactly what I have recommended for a lot of my peri and menopausal clients and show you how they can make progress with very simple tools that most clients are using anyway. But I want to show you exactly what I've done for these women, and hopefully it can help you. Hey there, everyone. My name is Allie Virtue. I am a functional medicine nutritionist and owner of Parkside Nutrition, and I am your host for the PreDiet Podcast. This podcast is all about teaching you everything you need to know before you have to hire a nutritionist, before you feel the need to start another diet on Monday. And this episode in particular, we are talking about how I address perimenopausal or menopausal clients. I'm sharing 3 case studies of exactly how I handle this. You're going to see how I handled their nutrition, their lifestyle elements, what we did exercise-wise, so you can truly get an insight about this stage of life and how the nutrition and healthy lifestyle habits might change or might look actually very similar to the average client. All right, let's dig into it. So I want to go over a few case studies that come to mind with this specific topic. This first one, this lady is about 45 years old, starting at just over 190 pounds, 5'3", and doing a decent amount of activity. Very active, outdoorsy person. Was doing a little bit of weightlifting, I believe, and legitimately she was eating on average for the first 7 days that she tracked 1,000 calories, dead on 1,000 calories, 96 grams of protein, 24 grams of carbs. She had done keto in the past and just was gaining weight after trying or coming off of keto, just gained weight even if she wasn't, quote, eating too many more calories. And she saw no weight loss. Her weight fluctuated from, 192.6 to 193 that week of tracking, and again, averaging about 1,000 calories per day. So not great. So I was real nervous to get this started with this client because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It seems like you're doing a lot of generally good things. And the first steps that we did were to increase her calories. So this is called a reverse diet. This is sometimes what bodybuilders use when they are coming off stage or coming off of a really low calorie intake. And this is to mitigate any fat gain, but they need to increase their calories for overall health, for, successful dieting in the future, etc. So what I did for her, I outlined kind of our phases. So to start with, we were going to spend about 11 weeks building calories back up. And I think she actually lost weight. So like I said, she started at 193 and went down to 186 after about 14 weeks. And we started a cut at week 12. So week 12, we started to cut back calories, but she was able to build her intake into a much higher amount. I'm just going to see what that actually was. So we built her calorie intake. Her first goals, the first week, she's coming in on 1,000 calories a day. And that first week, her goal was to eat 1,150 calories. So that is where she started for that next week. And then that next week, we added about 150, 100 calories. So we're just inching up her macros. So we added about 15 grams of protein each week. Sometimes people will just snap their protein up to that traditional, like healthy amount, which for her is probably around 145, 130 grams of protein per day. And we built that up pretty quick. And then slowly adding carbohydrates as well. So adding about 15 grams of carbs, 15, 20 grams of carbs each week. So she started out with 39 grams of carbs, and then we went up to 55 and 70 and 85. So gradually building up her carbohydrate intake, and it's not too hard to build up fat intake as well. So we added a couple grams each week, and that's how we added the about 150 calories each week to her daily intake. And then I believe we started to we got her up to almost 2,000 calories. So she almost doubled her calorie intake in the space of about 12 weeks. And then we started to cut. So when she almost got up to 2,000 calories a day, she was pretty uncomfortable too at this point. She was pretty tired of food. It felt like a lot to eat. And then we cut it back down to 1,600 calories. And that's when she started to see kind of more normal weight loss. We also increased her steps. She still lifted 3 to 4 times a week. And then on weekends, she really likes to be outdoors, hike and climb mountains and all that wonderful stuff. So we definitely increased her steps. So she was moving multiple times a day. She kind of had a morning walk or like workout routine in the morning, would lift in the evening time, and we focused on sleep, of course, as well. But we kept chipping away and cutting calories for quite a while, and then she would kind of plateau, and so we would build calories back up to a comfortable amount. She would gain maybe a couple pounds, but not a lot, and then we would cut back calories again. And that's kind of the ebb and flow with, and she is one of the few that I've seen that is truly, truly under eating, not eating enough, and does need to build back calories. I would say the majority of people are not aware of how many calories they're actually eating, so they don't usually need to undergo this process. And that's a good thing. This is a hard, hard process to do. You have to spend like 3 months increasing your calories and have to do that periodically. That stalls the process a lot. So if you're overeating, honestly, easier, I swear. So don't be hard or don't, put guilt on yourself. If that's the case, it's great. It's the easier approach for sure. The next case study I want to talk about is a 77-year-old female, retired. She is almost 6 foot tall. She is active, goes for walks, but her step count was definitely a little bit on the lower side. She wasn't doing anything specific as far as exercise to start with, and that was definitely a focus. So we added daily walks. She lives in a really hot environment, so we had to take that into consideration. But that also meant, because it's really hot there during the summertime, that we needed to have an indoor option for exercise. So we have a plan all year long. So that can definitely be a factor when you're creating plans for people. You need to have something that is sustainable all year long, or be ready to pivot and have options. So we do keep moving throughout the year. And typically I'm in Oregon, so we get a little bit of heat during the summertime, but typically our obstacle is the wet and the rain and the cold during the rest of the year. And to be honest, I walk anyway. I haven't really regretted ever walking, and you feel good afterwards, etc. So, but if that is the case for you and you're not willing to walk in inclement weather, then you need to have another option. And typically that's maybe walking on a treadmill, having another really active hobby that we are really purposefully moving during, not just like casual light gardening or something like that. Or we need to increase our gym time. So maybe we add our walk-in before or after workouts, add in an extra day, or increase our lifting, etc. But be willing to be flexible to make sure that the exercise is happening. For this person, they really did well with doing Silver Sneaker workouts. I believe they're online and free. You can also look up in-person Silver Sneaker exercises, which I really encourage this person to do, so they can be under the supervision of an instructor and have access to higher weights. Typically, those workouts are done with very light weights. And I really encouraged her to ask the instructor or inform the instructor that she is really trying to build muscle. She is trying to lift heavier weights, and to help her be really proactive about helping her with really good form, and also, advising her about, when she can increase the weights to continually give her body a different stimulus to like build the muscle, etc. Because that is really, really crucial for her. In her weight loss goals, we really need to maximize the muscle mass so we can increase the calories. That is definitely a struggle with this particular client. She really doesn't overeat very much. If anything, I think her typical calorie intake was something around 1,000 calories, 1,100 calories, sometimes less. And you find this a lot in older clients, is they're just simply not that hungry. And then you're also telling them to eat more protein, and that's extra filling as well, on top of increasing fiber. So it gets to be a really filling meal. So sometimes you kind of got to meet the person where they're at. So instead of just prescribing a person, 140 grams, 150 grams of protein, even though our protein need has legitimately increased, you can't really just give someone an unrealistic goal. So keep that in mind. If you are in that age category and you start to increase your protein and you're just really too full and not hungry for it, do the best you can, but also really try to increase the activity, increase the resistance training or walking, because one, that's good for longevity. Two, that hopefully increases our appetite in a healthy way. And then with more food, we can build more muscle. So you kind of have to see how you can attack this goal from multiple angles as far as exercise and nutrition. And hopefully they create this positive feedback loop, and that gets us going in the right direction. Another reason to increase our protein is also because of the thermic effect. So our body burns more calories digesting protein and utilizing protein. So that's another reason to increase it, because it's not going to be a complete 100% net gain of calories from our protein sources. So that's another really important component to this picture as well. So for my last case study, again, this is a woman in her 70s and she's a relatively healthy weight. So these clients, and if you are this kind of demographic, it's very difficult to lose weight. I probably don't have to tell you that. It's not impossible, but this is where we really have to find that balance of needing to have sufficient amount of food because again, typically their appetite is not huge. In the sense of like, I don't find too many people that are legitimately like excessively overeating, like 3,000 calories a day or anything like that. But their protein's again usually too low. So sugar cravings are still a part of the picture. And that's where they're probably adding that little bit extra calories in that they might not realize. And because they're not over consuming to an obvious point. But that's where we can find our little bit of calories that we can moderate or potentially decrease by increasing protein and bringing down some of those sugar cravings, the carb cravings, some of those foods that just aren't going to give us as much nutrition. Because again, we're trying to flood the body with nutrition that it can really utilize for optimal health. So for this person, we increased protein. We brought down their carbohydrates. Actually, their carbs weren't that high to begin with. We kept those pretty moderate. Again, this is another person that had tried keto in the past. So we kept those pretty moderate, but it was a real big education on where our fat sources were coming from. And I see this a lot in general population, people that have done paleo or keto or just tried to like clean eating, so to speak, which is not terribly specific, but clean eating in general. But again, this is where people really learn what their food's made out of and how to kind of balance the budget. Because if you're eating really healthy foods and you're generally moving, like that can be very frustrating cycle of like, well, I'm doing so many things right. And you absolutely are. But we just need to see how much we're consuming and where we can kind of nip and tuck. So we're keeping the most amount of nutrition coming in with maybe slightly less calories. But again, I'm really trying to add some activity in with more walking, more steps, just creating a more active lifestyle for ourselves. And then especially with that stimulus of resistance training, that's going to hopefully increase our muscle mass. And with sufficient food or having a very, very mild calorie deficit, there is potential there to gain a little bit of muscle mass. But I'm very, very hesitant in this population to cut calories significantly because that's putting their muscle mass at risk. So they might lose some and they certainly won't build some. And that is way more important for longevity than necessarily, losing the next, the final 10 pounds. That's generally not a big deal as far as longevity. So ethically, I don't feel like I can, just slash calories to get this person to their new goal weight or anything like that, because I don't think that's a good option long term. So this is a process that's going to take a little bit. And I always try to be really upfront, especially if someone does not have a lot of weight to lose and they want to kind of lose belly fat or recomposition as far as like look more toned, etc. This is going to take a little bit and it's not going to be as, gratifying in the sense of like when someone's trying to lose like 100 pounds, 200 pounds. Yeah, that's a hard journey for sure. But they're going to see a lot of loss up front and it's going to be easier progress to track because it's a bigger change in numbers, right? So for this particular goal and demographic, taking pictures is helpful. Taking measurements is really helpful. Measuring your weights in the gym. So how much weight are you lifting and moving so we can track that your strength is getting better. Hopefully your mobility, your balance, all those other things get better. Increased energy should be a part of this picture as well. But it's the basics. It's just tweaked. Some red flags that I would think of as far as the basics of like how we can tweak the basics. Overtraining could be a potential, but I would probably say I don't find too many people overtraining. I find them not doing enough weightlifting or resistance training to build muscle. And building muscle to a point, it's not that we have to have like hugely different workouts, but you should be pushing yourself to the extent of like it's a different stimulus. So for me, example, I'm not, perimenopausal or in this age group, but for me to gain muscle doing the same amount of CrossFit, I would really have to increase the weights. I would have to increase the duration or something about my programming to make it a newer stimulus. So when people have been lifting for a really long time and they try to gain more muscle, they have to push it really hard versus if someone's never lifted before, you've never done resistance training, it's already going to be a very new stimulus. So this is to say, if you're intimidated by weightlifting, resistance training, getting in the gym, going to that area of the gym with all the bodybuilders and bros and stuff, don't be. You're going to see great results without having to, hurt yourself or lift incredibly heavy weights. Heavy is relative to you, and your body is just going to just benefit so much from adding this new stimulus, and especially pairing it with the nutrition, because usually I find people doing one or the other, but finding that magical combination of enough protein, just enough food, good sleep, good recovery practices as far as stretching, mobility, still moving, So walking outside of our gym days is so important. And, pairing it with the right amount of exercise is just so, so incredibly important. So hopefully this gives you insight into how you can make these changes. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're just tweaking the system a little bit and making sure that it is absolutely customized to you. Another layer I didn't really add into this, but obviously we'd personalize the specific meals based on your specific health conditions too. So that might dictate a little bit more of like how many carbohydrates we add in, certain foods that we might avoid based on blood work and things like that. But I just really want to send the message that you are absolutely not broken. This can be a more difficult situation to achieve health goals or weight loss if that's your goal, but you can absolutely do something about it. And it doesn't have to be incredibly stressful. It can be an enjoyable process, believe it or not, because you are creating a healthier version of yourself and there are lots of tools available to you. So if you have any other questions about this topic or another nutrition topic that you want covered, please feel free to email me, Allie@parksidenutrition.com, and I would love to cover that for you. If you want more case studies, if this was interesting, definitely let me know. But otherwise, make sure you are following along, leave a comment, leave a review of the podcast, and make sure you are subscribed at parksidenutrition.com/subscribe to the free Shit Friday email list. All right, that's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.